without trust, there's nothing. You don't even have a business without trust.
You were delivering the news, the passing of Princess Diana, the 9/11. These are huge, monumental moments in time.
You go into work mode. What's actually happening? Can we verify this? And there you'd be able to have those conversations off the record. If it's not perfection you seek, it's excellence. Confidence is a really interesting thing. Once I've got the confidence, I can do this. But actually, confidence comes through taking action.
Exactly how not to build trust. Nobody I've spoken to does trust in them.
Probably the most understated skill in communication. I mean, preparation is absolutely fundamental. And then people will say, well, how long should a good pause be? No, don't be afraid to ask those questions. Point you make about monotone delivery, it's because
So I am super excited for this conversation today.
Absolutely.
We have built all of our businesses off one solid foundation, which is trust. And we have a very special guest with us today. Everything she has done has been built off trust. It has to be. I'm not going to say too much. I'm going to let you introduce yourself and what it is you've done in your businesses and your sort of a timeline of where you've been and what you've been doing. But I have 1,000,001 questions. I'm going to try and keep them to an hour if I possibly can. So over to you.
Wow. Oh my goodness, how much time have we got? Okay. So I have to take you right back perhaps to 1992 when I graduated from Sussex University. And I decided I wanted to work in the media. And after a lot of work experience, placements, I got a job at Pebble Mill in Birmingham. You know, the big BBC Pebble Mill, iconic. And it was amazing. And I started as a reporter on the road. So my first career was 15 years in the media as a reporter, a producer, and then the presenter. And I started at the BBC, but finished. I spent most of my career, I'd say almost 8-9 years at ITV Central News. So news and current affairs is the background. When I came out, I ventured into this world of business because I thought, you know, I've got all these skill sets that businesses could really do with around communication, around messaging. And with my business partner, we co-founded 3 companies, which we helped to grow. They became profitable. And then in 2022, I exited those. And through it all, I always say I've been working with people on what's your message and how do you want to deliver it. That is fundamentally the essence of everything that I do. My businesses have been around that. My first career tapped into that. And now I work with individuals, with businesses of all sizes on exactly that. So I don't know if that gives you the nutshell that you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's incredible. So could we start almost, I suppose, back at the beginning then at the TV news presenter? I mean, that is I think it's one of those jobs you look at and think, how hard is it reading off a teleprompter kind of thing or reading it? But I bet it's really, really challenging because, well, I'm not going to say too much because I want you to tell me, but why that? Why go into that? Because that's not it's not, you don't hear many kids saying, I'm going to be a news presenter or a reporter or something. So why that?
Yeah, I think I didn't start off thinking, oh, I want to be a news presenter. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a TV presenter, but I wanted to be a TV presenter on the travel show and go and travel the world, right? Because I saw Judith Chalmers do it all those years ago. And I was like, I want that job. And I just happened to fall into news and current affairs. This is a time when you had no diversity panels, so you had, you know, not a lot of diversity on the screen or behind the scenes. And I got involved because I got into the radio station at Sussex University. And then I thought, this is a really interesting career. I don't see a lot of Asians doing it. I think it might keep marriage at bay for me as well. And so I started talking to people. And I, like I said, started as the reporter. And of course, you know, when you look back in the early days of television, 1950s, 60s, 70s, the news presenters were actors and actresses.
Okay.
What happened afterwards, and certainly when I came into the industry, was they were trained journalists and reporters. So we were all trained in journalism and reporting, and that's what you'd find now as well. All these presenters that you see, they're not chat show presenters. They actually have this solid foundation in journalism. So I think in those days, yes, the reason I went from being the reporter to the producer was I was okay at getting to the heart of the story when it's unraveling, when everything's happening around you at 100 miles per hour. The story unfolds before your eyes and you have to capture that, and you have to be able to start scripting it and then looking at who are you going to go and interview. There's a lot going on, and that was all right, actually. That was never the problem for me.
Okay.
But I had another problem, which was much bigger for a reporter. I have no sense of direction. So this was, you didn't even have sat nav in the cars, and you had to get to the story on time.
Right.
And it became really stressful for me.
yeah.
So I was like, no, I need to still work in the media, but I'll go from my home to the newsroom, and at least I know that route.
Yeah.
And then I became the producer, and from there I became the presenter.
Okay, amazing. So you spoke there about delivering news, and from researching you, research everybody beforehand. It sounds really weird when you say researching people, doesn't it? But you were delivering the news, obviously, when Princess Diana, the passing of Princess Diana, the 9/11. These are huge, monumental moments in time. What is it like delivering that news when you're reading it like, oh my God, this is horrific. But now all of a sudden, any emotion I might be feeling, I've almost, I don't know, do you park it and then have to become almost, I'm Arti now, the newsreader? And do you keep emotion? How do you prepare for that? How do you do it? I mean...
Yeah, I think it's like a lot of professions, actually. You're trained on the job in the role. So the job of a reporter, of a presenter, of a journalist is to tell the story. And there is an element of emotion that has to remain slightly detached. And you'll see it on all news presenters. They are pretty much balanced in their delivery of the stories. The big global events like Diana, Princess of Wales, incredibly unexpected. The planes going into the Twin Towers. I remember it was my first week at ITV Central in Birmingham on that Wednesday, Thursday, being in the newsroom when that was actually unfolding before all our eyes. And we're human at the end of the day. So, everyone has those huge emotive reactions. But I think when you're in the zone of the job, that's what you're doing. You're in the zone of the job. And our job is to relay the story. And so I think everything else just becomes slightly suppressed, all those emotions and, oh my goodness, what's happening? Or, and what we do is we go into work mode, and it's very much like, okay, who do we need to interview about this? What's actually happening? Have we got more information coming through from that? Can we verify this? So that's the frame of mind you're in. You're in work mode. And if you think about perhaps a surgeon who is on their feet for, 5, 7, 10 hours in a really intensive operation where they're so focused, they can maintain that for such a long period of time. If you think of the racing driver, that, I went on the Nürburgring. I've been on the Nürburgring. I know.
What was your time? What was the time? We need to ask what the time. That's the most important.
I don't even remember, but it was faster than my husband.
That's all that matters then.
That's all that matters.
So I just remember having a newfound respect for racing drivers, thinking, oh my goodness, you cannot afford to sneeze in a situation like that. But everybody is trained. And so I think it's just the type of training. And I think we're trained to perhaps just get on with the job. But what used to happen was after the shift's finished, you would perhaps go for a drink in the BBC club or, to bars or, wherever. And there you'd be able to have those conversations off the record, obviously, and, gasp at what had actually happened.
Yeah, I mean, that must have been her. I mean, it was like you say, I remember being at 9/11, for example, being at work somewhere, and we had a warehouse, and there was like this, like a little office thing within the warehouse, where the lads go and kind of thing, and for the drinks, and they used to smoke, because you could smoke in those days, couldn't you, in the workplace?
Gosh, wow.
And
Back in the day,
Yeah.
it was all, yeah.
And I remember them coming out saying planes have just gone into a building. I'm like, what do you mean planes have gone into a building? That doesn't make sense. And it was, so the idea of then you being in that environment and having this information coming through, and even to me, even though you say you're trained, it seems it must have been really challenging, something of that magnitude happening, something so shocking, unprepared, and then a second one as well. It's like,
I think the adrenaline just really kicks off. And newsrooms certainly used to be like pressure cookers in a way. There's always so much going on. And this isn't, I mean, I don't know what they're like now. I can imagine that the pressure would be just different because you've got so many different mediums you're feeding into. In those days, if you worked in television, you worked in television. If you were in radio, you worked in radio. But I guess, you don't know the magnitude. You just don't know how it's unraveling. It's just unraveling. We only realise the magnitude of it afterwards.
when you process it.
Yeah.
Right.
Or, we understood the magnitude of the death of Diana, but look at the scale of it. I mean, I think it took us all by surprise. Number one, she was so young, she was so adored, she was so popular, and it was so untimely. It came so out of the blue. And but now we look back, or even a week or 2 weeks, and then you start to see the actual magnitude of it. Then in that moment, it feels big, but you're still in that moment.
Okay. Do you have to prepare for it on the day? So once you know that event's happened, and you've got to come back and give people the updates of what's going on and things have changed, is there like a mental preparation thing that you go through to get yourself into a state of mind that says, right, I am now Arti, the newsreader, to be able to deliver this news?
I don't think there's that preparation. I think you just go in, the story's moved forward, and your focus is, okay, what is my story for the day, or how far has it moved forward, and how are we going to get one up on the competition? And because you're competitive, and what angle haven't we covered? So you're in work zone, I think, and then you're kind of looking at all the different angles, and have we covered everything we need to, and what's this going to look like by the end of the day? What's this going to look like tomorrow, or down a week down the line? And what's actually going on in the current moment? Because news is current by its nature, and it's you're dealing with that moment.
Interesting. So is there, I mean, I guess not from what you've said there, but when you switch from such a horrific story to a positive story, is that just still the moments of, well, I'm just delivering here news, or do you feel like a shift inside when you're delivering those different types of news?
Yeah, I think, look, naturally we're human, right? So when it's a disastrous story or a devastating story, there is an element of that has to come through in that vocal delivery, through your facial expressions, through that body language, because it's got to all be aligned. Otherwise, it doesn't become believable. And I think naturally when you then move on to a more human interest story, or the have a go hero, or something that bridges. It's very rare that you go from a really devastating story to a really good feel factor story. There's normally one that bridges, that kind of allows both the viewer or the listener and the presenter to be able to kind of sort of make it a bit more gradual and palatable.
Interesting. I think that news reading is probably one of the few roles where you have to fully trust the person who's delivering the information. So like you've mentioned, like a surgeon, for example, right? We have to trust the person who's going to cut us open and operate on us, because we are totally at their mercy. They could do whatever they want. And I think that with news, we have to be able to trust the person delivering that news. So how do you become so trustworthy? Because me standing up saying, "Hi, I'm Chris, you should trust me," that doesn't make me trustworthy whatsoever. So how do you go back to building that sort of rapport and that empathy and that connection with the audience?
I think you're absolutely right. Without trust, there's nothing, right? But actually, you don't even have a business without trust, right? So trust is fundamental, and trust comes through a number of different things. Trust comes through how you convey information through meaning. Trust comes through your own authenticity and genuineness. Do you mean what you're saying? Because we can see when people are just going through the motions and reeling something off. And we can see when somebody is actually impacted or means what they're saying. Trust also, I think, comes through credentials. So you would have had to have built kind of sort of, your credentials over a period of time. And of course, you're a news presenter, maybe it's the first time you're delivering that bulletin. But that doesn't mean that you might not have been a reporter out on the road before that. Increasingly, when I look at the news presenters, you know that they've been out on the road, that they've been these reporters that really understand this medium and are able to ask those questions, are able to deal with things under pressure, are able to reassure the audience that you're okay, you're in safe hands. And you've got all these different facets, I think, which is what trust is made up of, as well as consistency. And then I think, we could turn around and say, well, we live in a time now where we've got citizen journalism. Everybody could be a reporter. We see it now, right, in new media. Everyone reports on things. And I think the main fundamental difference between, terrestrial channels like BBC, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, Sky Newsroom, and citizen journalism is fundamentally that, we abide by a rule of ethics. And in newsrooms, that's what you have. You have the legals, you have ethical standards, and, all reporters will report into their editors, and, there is editorial control. We are not going to show you something hugely graphic that we can see because we see all the footage coming into the newsroom.
Okay.
So, we are not going to just put something out if it's not verified or if we haven't got a balanced view on it. And certainly in my time, it was much more stricter. Now you've got the rolling news formats, the 24/7 news coverage, that's a lot of pressure, small advertising budgets, but, more advanced technology, more multi-skilling. So times are very, very different. But fundamentally, those are the core differences between citizen journalism and sort of what you've got as traditional media. And I think what's perhaps also quite interesting is there is a place, of course, for all of it, because just look at the recent protests in Iran, which would never have got out had it not been through social media. In 2010, if you look at the Arab Spring and how that started in Tunisia, in a part of the world where there, it's all state operated, it's not independent media coverage that you get. It's through the ruling parties. Then, how that spread through Egypt, how that spread through Lebanon, through Syria, through, that part of the world, and how it toppled governments. So it's very, very powerful. But I think it depends what you want to use each for.
Yeah, interesting. What did you prefer best? So reading the news or the journalistic part of going and interviewing and finding the story out and which did you enjoy more?
Oh, I think I quite enjoyed presenting, but only because I was told by my editor at the time that I would have to produce my bulletins.
Okay.
So, I was a new breed of presenter that would roll their sleeves up and really get involved in helping to work with the producer to pull the bulletins together. So, absolutely, you have to make a phone call to all the newsrooms, not the newsrooms, the fire station, the police station, and I really was a part of that team. And, that's exactly what I did. And I think that happens a lot in the regions, and certainly used to. In a national newsroom, the dynamic is still slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
But definitely in the regions, you rolled up your sleeves, and you were part of the team that produced the bulletins, would write some scripts, would just full on get involved. And then kind of sort of closer to the time when the bulletin would be transmitted, you would go and do what you needed to, go down into the studio, have a bit of time, and then go live on air.
Ah. So we're doing a documentary at the moment, aren't we?
We are.
We started filming a feature-length documentary about a person and their journey, and I absolutely love the idea of getting not under the skin, because that sounds really weird, doesn't it? But understanding what makes a person tick and why they are what they are and why they do certain things. And I've really enjoyed that aspect of. I think we sat down. Was it 2 full days interviewing?
Yeah.
And just understanding, and that it was really interesting because I'm the kind of person that will watch a TV program and somebody's being interviewed, and I'm like, well, ask this now, or ask that, or well, that doesn't make sense. So what does that mean to me? And so it was really interesting being able to do that. That's why I love Louis Theroux.
Oh,
I love his style of interview, and he asks the questions that we all want the answers to. But he's so clever the way he asks them.
Yeah.
It's
He's
almost
so unassuming as well, isn't he? I think that's why people fall into the trap.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because, he's just like so happy, easygoing, and just so like, well, it's just me, and, you can say anything to me.
Yeah.
And so he unnerves people straight away.
Yeah.
And then like he just comes across as deadpan.
Yeah.
And he asks these questions, and they're amazing.
Yeah, they are.
And so what is it? What did you find? Did you find any patterns, and what makes people tick? Is there a theme through this?
I think it's childhood, actually. There are lots of things that happen early on in life that we don't necessarily think have impacted us. But it's only when we reflect later on that we realise, well, that's why I do that. So one of the things I can't say too much because it's not out yet, but the documentary is about a man who's built a massively successful business in a really short period of time. And one of his things was food, community and food. And that didn't make sense until he even didn't make sense to himself, actually.
Yeah, I think he was realising as he spoke it out loud, really starting from the beginning and going into detail, he said himself, well, actually, that's why I did it that way.
Yeah, so it was his parents, his grandparents were on the estate, and they had people from other ethnicities living with them and stuff, and it was always around food, and they would always get together on the weekend as a family and eat, and everything was about food. And so that's one of his secret powers in community. That's one of his secret powers. So I think there's lots of things that happen to us in younger life that we don't necessarily think have impacted or shaped us, but when we reflect, they probably have.
I think there's that famous saying, isn't there, that give me a child, and I will for 7 years, and I will give you the man.
Oh, okay, I've not heard
So
that.
this is the ages from 0 to 7 are the formative years, and psychologists, there's a lot of research that's been done about this, and they say that they call those the formative years because that's actually where children are formed, and that stays with them right through into adulthood.
Wow. Okay, I've learned something. Look at that, I didn't know that. Well, very good.
Powerful.
So we spoke a lot about trust, and you've mentioned pressure a lot as well. And I think those are two things, as well as communication. I think actually they're probably all linked in some way. There's a triangle there some way in business. And we trust is a word now, I think, that's thrown around as almost like a buzzword. It's, we'll add trust into our strapline, into our marketing, and people will now all of a sudden trust us because we've said trust, so you should. And when we first set up Thread a Pixel, 8 years ago, that was one of the things that we wanted to be open and honest and as transparent as we could do as a business. We needed people to trust us because that was important to us for our own morals and who we were as people. And I think it was only, we'd probably realised that when, probably about 3 or 4 years in, where we'd done all the branding and the marketing ourselves. And then we had companies approach us saying, I really like your branding. You're a franchise. No, we're not. It's just us. Are you doing it all yourselves? Yeah, okay. Could you do me a website, or could you do my branding? Well, I can do. We don't offer that as a service, but I can do. And I think at that moment, we kind of realised that we've probably onto something here, and that people obviously trust us because I've got no examples of work I've shown. You've not asked to see, if you're spending a few £1,000s on a website, the first thing you do is say, can I see some other bits of your work? But we were never asked that. It was, I trust you because I know you. We've used you for workwear. I see what you've produced on your own site, so I trust you to build us. And I think now trust is a word that's just thrown in and it's not got a lot of meaning to it. So what would you say to businesses that want to and should advertise but gain trust from their audience? What could they do? What are some of the steps they should be taking other than just saying, trust me because I am the best, or trust me because I say trust me?
It's a really interesting one. And I think one of the things is you've got to walk your talk. You see so many people who say, I can do this, or, we're the best at this. And then you peel that back a bit and actually, no, they're not. So I think one of the things is you have to walk your talk. I think one of the things I did really early on, so I was working in television and then I went part-time and I dabbled in business. I thought, I really want to get into this world of business. So this is before I set up anything with my business partner. And it was, I was saying to people, I can help you with your speech or your presentation skills, or, because I started doing a bit of it myself. I'd be asked, Arti, could you do this award ceremony, or could you come and give a talk here? And so I thought, oh, okay, but I'm not a natural presenter. So I have to work really hard, and I still have to work really hard to take even 30 years down the line. But the truth of the matter is that I think, one of the things I always did early on was I'd say to people, I'm happy to work with you, but could you give me a testimonial and would you be willing to put your name to it?
Right.
And a lot of sites I started seeing would just have an anonymous general manager or anonymous SME company. And it meant nothing. And I knew that, to stand out in a saturated market, I would need to think differently. And it's never been a problem for me to do that. I remember my first CV was done like a magazine. So it was still A4, but I'd folded it in half. So it became A5. And then, I don't know, I put on the back like 10 things you didn't know about Arti Halai. And on the cover, it was like a magazine. And inside, there was a little, on the cover, there was a little tea bag, your freebie. So, or I'd always done my CV on an off-white sheet of colour paper because I knew everybody's would be white. So I've not been afraid to do things differently. And I think coming back to the business, I was always like, no, and I always found that when you gave immense value to people, they were really happy to do that. I said, look, this is how my business would grow, or this is what I need for my business. And so from day one, I'd got these testimonials and I'd got people willing to put their name to the work I'd done with them. So that builds trust. Yeah. I think, that comes from the value that you're giving them. And so, that comes because people actively see you doing things. I mean, I get, even now, a lot of my work comes from people who see me on stage doing something because that's the skill set that I share with them. So I think there's an element of trust that comes through that. And then I think we spoke earlier, didn't we, about kind of sort of consistency. Yes. Really important. We spoke about, really delivering what you say you're going to deliver, because trust is based on a promise. You say you're going to deliver something, so you need to deliver that. Yeah. So these are all, facets of trust that I think people tap into.
Yeah, I think that one thing I hate is that when somebody says, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z by this date, and they don't do it. And it's not that they haven't done it, it's the fact that you didn't tell me it wasn't going to get done. So is this saying, is it under promise, over deliver, or something like that? So if you're gonna, like, one of my biggest bugbears when people say to me, I'll get back to you tomorrow on that. That's fine. I'm happy you've said that. That's great. I appreciate that. And then you don't. Just message me and say, do you know what? I'm really sorry. I said I was going to get back to you today. Something's come up. I promise. I say to the team all the time, if a job's going ready on Thursday, tell the customer it's ready on Friday. Then when we deliver it on Thursday, they're going to be over the moon, right? And just because things happen.
Do you know what? It's a brilliant tactic and it's the right move, definitely. Just picking up on one of the points you made about, when people say, I'm going to do this and then they don't. There's also this miscommunication piece that I find that comes up again and again and again. And it's because sometimes that instruction hasn't been clear enough.
Right.
Get it to me by the end of the week. Well, is that Wednesday or is that Friday? Is that morning or is that afternoon? So the clearer we are in our ask, the more specific we are, the more that message will land.
Yeah. That's really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Because I'm probably guilty of something like that. I'll get it to you by the end of the
I think
week.
we all are. We all do it.
Specific. And that is really interesting because that leads nicely onto communication, I think, in business. And we were having this chat earlier, weren't we, before you came in, that I think as business owners, entrepreneurs, whatever you want to call us, I think we all think, me included, that we are really good communicators, that we can have a conversation with somebody and all that. And I think that we are great at storytelling because I think we have to be. I think where we struggle, though, is I'm not sure that many of us are actually that good at communicating with someone. We can communicate to someone, as in I can tell you something, but to me, that's not communicating with somebody. That's a two-way conversation, and you know it, right? When you're speaking to somebody else and you're having a conversation and they're not listening to what you're saying and you're thinking, I know you're not listening, but I'm going to... And then they're thinking of their own question or they're off in Dubai in their head or wherever they are. And communication's such a key thing in every part of business. And I think that, I know you do a lot of work on this now with people, that business owners especially, we need to get better at communicating. We can talk to somebody, but can we talk with somebody?
Yeah, I call it TOAT. TOAT, actually.
Oh, I think you said twat.
No, it sounds like that, right? That's why I remember it. Because to your point, there's talking to someone and there's talking at someone. So nobody wants to be talked at. We want to talk to someone and we want to talk with someone. But I think to your point, it's when you're talking to someone and you can read, right? When someone's interested, when they're engaged. I'm looking at you and Helen now. You're both nodding your heads. You're smiling at me. So I know we're engaged in this conversation. And so that's one sign right there. And another sign, when you start thinking, actually, maybe I've gone off on a tangent or they're not following me or they're somewhere else, is how to bring them back. And you want to bring them back by maybe just asking a small question.
Okay.
Right? So you want to just bring them back to say, does that make sense? Or have I gone off tangent? Or are you still with me? Or, you could do it that way. You could do it because you're thinking now, actually, okay, you know what? Their eyes aren't meeting mine or they're somewhere else. So you could do it by just pausing.
Okay.
Now I've paused. Right? All of a sudden, the attention comes back. So there are a few things you can use to sort of bring that attention back and then to reset. But one of the best things is really to get that person to say something, because then they'll feel part of a conversation again. Right. So, you've obviously been talking and then their mind's gone somewhere else. So you think it's gone somewhere else. So that means you've been talking for too long and you haven't, they felt excluded from this conversation.
The power of pausing is such a huge thing, isn't it? And it's something I really struggle with because I get so excited, so engrossed in the conversation. And it's something, like we said earlier, we're both looking to do a little bit more public speaking this year. And it's something that is so powerful. I'm even trying to do it.
I can see.
I feel weird doing it though. But when I listen to speeches myself, and you've just literally demonstrated it a moment there, it does have that power, doesn't it? So
it's probably the most understated skill in communication. It really is. And then people will say, well, how long should a good pause be? And I often say, 2 to 3 seconds feels like a lifetime, of course.
Yes.
But just think elephants, 1 elephant, 2 elephants. in your mind, obviously, not out loud.
Don't think it had the same impact now.
so but it's very, very powerful. And I also say to people, when you're asked a question, don't dive in. Don't just jump in straight away. Immediately people feel the impulse to just say, their mind's trying to catch up with what they're saying. But the first word, and I heard it from Jefferson Fisher, an American attorney, I think he is. He's brilliant. But he said, your first word is a breath.
Fantastic. Yeah. It is just that slowing down and just people being able to absorb it that little bit more, isn't it? It's very powerful.
It is. And I think it adds another layer of credibility as well, doesn't it? When somebody is slower in their approach, when they're talking and they slow down, you instantly, rightly or wrongly, think that person is really smart.
Do you know what? It's so interesting you say this, because you're absolutely right. We have this thing in our heads that, there's a lot about psychometrics and, extroverts and extroverts being great presenters and introverts not so, which is just not true at all, by the way, because some of the world's best presenters are introverts. Okay. So Steve Jobs was an introvert. Barack Obama is an introvert. More recently, Oprah Winfrey has come out and said she sees herself as an introvert, right? So you've got all these incredible presenters who say, actually, we probably align more with being introverts than extroverts. But I think what's really powerful is what you say about there's a space for both. You can be passionate and excited and speak loud and speak fast, and that's great. But you absolutely have to be able to navigate that vocal range that you've got and slow things down as well. And brilliant CEOs and MDs and leaders in businesses, when they've got a point to make, then they'll make it.
Right. You've just done it there.
I
liked
it.
I was hanging on. I was hanging on. You got me hooked.
Yeah. Absolutely love it. And you can absolutely see now that transition of all your skills in the news and as a producer, and now applying that in business to other people, because you've been there, done that, you've proven it, you know it inside out. So it's the perfect transition, isn't it?
I think I don't know it inside. I mean, I'd love to say I know it inside out, but I think communication is one of those skills that is work in progress. We always work at it. We'll always have to keep working at it and chipping away at it. It's never static. It's like perfection. People think, it's got to be perfect. And then I always say human beings can never be perfect because we are growing and evolving and developing all the time. A statue can be perfect. Right? But actually humans, we by sheer nature just can't be. So it's not perfection you're seeking, it's excellence. It's, knowing that I gave it the best I possibly could. I did the best I could. That is what you're really seeking. And when you know that, and you'll know it inside, that's good. Now, it might not be as brilliant as somebody else's, but it's the best you could do. And that's a great space to be. You don't need to be, we live in a world where everything is about comparing yourself with everybody else. And it's just so skewered. And that's why we've got, I think, so many of the recurring problems that we see.
I agree.
But if you compete with just yourself and you've given it your best shot, that's good.
I think the interesting thing is as well, everyone's idea of perfect is really quite different. And the fact that something isn't perfect can often be what people are attracted to, because it can be a little bit more authentic. And I love, something that you've said in the past is it's not about being just sounding like you know what you're talking about. It's everything more than that, isn't it? It's everything involved in that, and that being authentic with it as well. It's not just one factor, is it?
You say being perfectly imperfect.
Oh, there's a line.
She uses
Listen
it
to
all
you.
the time. As she's tidying. I mean, perfectly imperfect, darling.
Yes. I might have to use that myself. I like it.
And you mentioned about CVs before. So I should have met you 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
We had a business called #CV, where it was all about CVs, making CVs for people that stood out.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Because we went through, I was a manager at a company, and we would have hundreds of CVs. And genuinely, there was a statistic then, I think that the average recruiter spent 6 to 8 seconds looking at a CV before they decided if they were going to basically read into it further. And so my thing was always to people, if I've got 100 CVs on my desk and they're white paper with black text, Times New Roman or Helvetica if we're lucky, in black, like, between 10 and 12 points, there's no, apart from your name being bold and personal, there's nothing of personality, there's no difference. And so we built a system where people could go on there and have different designs. And it was already designed differently. So the idea being, if you've got 100 CVs on a table and one of those has got a pop of colour in, like you mentioned, or a slightly different layout or something quirky on it, you're instantly going to be, what's this one?
Yeah.
And I've already broken that 6 to 8 second boundary because I've spent that long just looking at the design thinking, and I want to read more. I have to read more because this person stood out from this sea of people. So we should have met you 10, 15 years ago.
All I'm thinking is, you're real hardcore entrepreneurs, you two, aren't you? I mean, look at this, look at these businesses that, you've been navigating.
What do you think about the word entrepreneur? Because we did a podcast on this. This is a little off topic, sorry, but we did a podcast last year, an episode on it.
Yeah.
I don't like being called an entrepreneur. Because to me, well, I'll ask you off first. What is your definition of an entrepreneur?
Okay, I want to hear this now.
Well,
it's
go on. What's
it's
your
an
definition?
interesting word. I mean, an entrepreneur in today's day and age probably means something very different to a lot of people compared to what it did maybe 15 years ago. And an entrepreneur really is somebody who's got lots and lots of different ideas, I think. I really genuinely do think this is the entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Because I think so few successful entrepreneurs are those that execute and then kind of sort of, build those businesses and see them through. Because ideas people can have 10 a penny, but they are willing to try. Entrepreneurs are willing to try to bring this idea to life. And I think that's probably, I would say that would be my definition of the entrepreneur. I mean, there's obviously when I say they want to bring whatever their idea is to life, it's transactional. So it involves an element of monetary exchange.
Yeah, interesting.
What about you?
To me, an entrepreneur is somebody who builds a business from nothing to something of huge scale, but doesn't necessarily have to have done social good, but there has to be a social good impact in there somewhere. To me, that is what entrepreneurship is. I speak to lots of businesses. I think the word is thrown around now too random. Everybody's an entrepreneur. If I've set up my first business and I'm 15, and I'm not saying they're not entrepreneurs, but it's just a word that is just like trust me. I'm an entrepreneur. I think everyone loves it. And if I see one more LinkedIn profile that says I'm an entrepreneur, I'm going to scream. Serial entrepreneur.
How about you, Helen?
Yeah, no, I agree with yourself in that it is anybody that has got like an idea for a business, that has set up a business, because like you say, it's so easy to say, like, I mean, you say it a lot yourself in that, I had that idea. And we all have the ideas, but it's who actually takes it to market and successfully. I think not the problem, but the difference with Chris is that he doesn't like to be the limelight. So I think he doesn't feel like he's justified that title. But I would call you an entrepreneur as well, because you've had a multitude of ideas that you have taken into a business, which on paper is what I agree that it is. But also, I appreciate that there are a lot of people that throw that word around who maybe haven't built that business themselves and have fallen into the business, and it's not quite the way that it's earned, which is why we love the name of our podcast, Built Not Born, because in business there are people that fall into it that haven't done that nitty gritty blood, sweat and tears. So I think you are unique in your thoughts, I must say.
Perfectly imperfect.
Yes. It's interesting because obviously, corporates you can put to one side because, they're hierarchical by nature. People go through the ranks, get promoted and whereas an entrepreneur is literally that idea that is built, that is behind the business once it's executed. You make an interesting point about leaders in the limelight and entrepreneurs in the limelight. And, I think it's quite interesting because years ago you might never have seen the leaders, the CEOs or the MDs, even when things went wrong or right, you had their spokespeople. And what's happened now is we live in a day and age where we don't want to see those spokespeople anymore. We want to see the people with whom the buck stops. We want to see those leaders taking full accountability and responsibility for things that haven't worked out on their watch, or maybe, when it's the other way around and something incredible's happened. And, that's why increasingly you see like the Elon Musks or, Richard Branson's always done it brilliantly, that these are entrepreneurs and they understand as leaders that I'm the face of this business.
Yeah, it's interesting that it has definitely changed, hasn't it? And that's why we love doing the podcast, because you get to speak to those people that where many years ago you wouldn't have thought that, and that is really what we're trying to instill in our son. He's only just turned 12, but we're saying, if you want to learn from people, ask those people because they're willing to help. If you're willing to learn and work hard, the world really is your oyster.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it has totally changed, hasn't it? So I think it's great.
Has. And I think that I've started saying more recently that the last role as an entrepreneur or business owner you should let go of is marketing. And in that you should be the strategy, you should be the lead of that. But you should be I think people talk about, I don't want to be a face of a business because it's difficult to exit and stuff. But I've met plenty of founders that have managed to exit just fine, having been the face of the business. I think that, like you say, that is probably for me one of the best ways and actually the easiest, if we can use that with trust, but that pairing as such. But probably one of the easiest ways to build trust is having the owner front and center of the business. And like you said, unfortunately, in business, there are times where things don't go the way we want them to. That is just the nature of the beast, okay? And you spoke about perfect. I say if you are perfect today, you shouldn't be perfect tomorrow because you're constantly pushing boundaries and trying new things. So there will be times where we get things wrong. And that is a perfect opportunity to stand tall and say, hey, this is me. This didn't go as I wanted it to. However, this is what I have done to rectify it. And we had something, and I'll say, somebody had the podcast studio a few weeks ago, and one of the cameras, you'll know all about this, it was hunting, so it wasn't focusing properly. And I didn't pick up on it. And came to the edit, and I realized, I was like, oh my God. So the guy had hired the studio, but all he wanted was just the footage. He was going to go and edit it himself. So I rang him straight away and said, look, I'm really sorry. This is what's happened. I'm not entirely sure why, but that's not the point. What we're going to do is I'm going to refund you the money for the booking. I'm going to edit it for you free of charge. And actually, I'm going to turn it around in 5 hours, which is like, it's just unheard of kind of thing. So I was here till like 1 o'clock in the morning doing that. The guy had it. It took a couple of days to get to him because I said, I'll send you all the original bits as well in case your editing team wants to make any changes. So there's full transparency. Took a couple of days. He gets it. Messaged me saying, Chris, it's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. His words, not mine. Pardon my French. Shit happens. Send me a review. I'll leave you a review. And please don't refund the money. I'm not giving you my bank details. And that was, I said to you, I was gutted and devastated it had happened.
To say the least, you were gutted.
But afterwards, it was almost like, well, not that I'm going to seek these opportunities, but that was an opportunity for me to say, actually, yeah, I have done wrong. But when I'm honest with somebody and I'm transparent and I tell them what's happened and I try and go above and beyond to fix it, that is an opportunity to show we're all human. And I think that is an easy way to earn trust.
I think it's a fantastic example. And if we just dissect it a little bit, I think it's, it really shows that you're right. We're human. Things happen. And in my crisis communications training, I'll always say there are 13 types of different crises that will hit your business. It's not about the crisis at all, actually. It's about how you handle it. That is what a man is measured on. That is what a woman is measured on. That is what a leader is measured on. How you handle a situation that has gone wrong under pressure. So in this instance, straight away, you put your hands up. You said, you know what? It's a mistake. It happened on my watch. Now, how am I going to put it right? So first of all, you've apologized. You've owned up to it. You've taken full accountability. And now you're saying, and responsibility. And now you're saying, okay, this has happened. How can I make it right? And then look at the options you've provided as well. You know what? Obviously, I'm not going to charge you. I'm going to do whatever I can to salvage this footage. Then I'm going to edit it. I'm going to turn it around in record time to make sure that you can see it, get it. And if you need to record something again, that avenue is open. And this is just the best example of, how to handle a situation that hasn't gone right. And I genuinely believe that, people are human. They give you the benefit of the doubt. And, they do understand things go wrong. It's when people start making those excuses or don't own up or try and hide it or, pass the buck or, it's all these other things that start grating and infuriating. So, a brilliant example to share. And, I can't stress it enough that, politicians should really learn from it because people get so tired of just answer the question.
Oh, yes, please.
Just if you got it wrong, say, you know what, we got it wrong.
Yeah.
Just stop, pushing the can down the road. So the whole story becomes that for a whole week. And, then you decide to own up. What a waste. I mean, how exasperated does that make people? And we see it so often, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
I think we're living in a world at the minute where everybody I speak to now is just hating the whole political landscape and just nobody, like you say, just owning what's going.
Well, that's exactly how not to build trust. Nobody I've spoken to does trust in them because they're renowned for not answering that question. Or even, worst case, saying they're going to deliver X, Y, Z and doing the opposite.
That's really interesting, actually, isn't it? Because we have to trust, well, we don't have to, but we do trust a politician because we kind of have to because they're making decisions on our future and our kids' futures. And yet we don't trust them, but we still have to decide who's going to come into power. That's a really interesting
Oh, that's
thing,
a whole podcast in itself.
I was just going to say, that is an interesting
part
podcast.
two. Yeah.
This is the democracy, right? This is the political landscape that we live in. But then at the same time, when you've got somebody elected, then actually how does that work and what are the dynamics there? And for me, it's interesting to think actually what role is the media playing in this as well? Because, when someone isn't saying what you want them to say, what you think they should be saying, then how much are you hounding them to do that? Or are we pushing them to a corner? I mean, it is another podcast for another day, but a very interesting topic, I think.
So, Keir Starmer, if you're listening, in this room...
This is where it's happening. This is where you need to be. We're putting the worlds to right.
We're going to bring Arti back in. We're going to talk to you. We're going to sort it out.
We're putting the worlds to right. And actually,
just...
I want to say it is not complicated. I know I say this again and again and again, and it's the same with communication. Nothing needs to be complicated. And I love what Albert Einstein says. The genius himself says, if it is not simple, you do not understand it enough.
Yeah.
We layer and we layer and we layer, whether it's because we're having a difficult conversation or going to, whether it's because it's something that, we've got doubts over, whatever it is, we go totally the opposite and we start layering and padding. And I always say, actually, I'm totally the opposite. And we peel back and we get to the essence of things.
Okay, so I've got a question off that then. So, people talking on camera is, for a lot of people, not everybody, but for a lot of people, it can be, as soon as they know a camera's on them, their personality, everything changes. So they might start waffling. They might become really monotone. They might not be able to communicate very effectively. What are some tips you might be able to give people that would help them not waffle, communicate clearly, and this, I don't like monotone voices. So what can they do to help change some of that?
So 2 things there. First of all, preparation is absolutely fundamental, right? So the more prepared you are, the better you'll feel, the more clarity you'll get. And really, less is more, right? So you have to be clear on actually what are the 2 or 3 things that I really want to focus on in this podcast. What is this podcast? And what are the 2 or 3 things that I really want to focus on? And then, of course, you want to have a conversation with the interviewers beforehand and say, actually, what angle are you taking on this topic? Or what's this podcast? Is there anything specifically? I mean, in the spirit of transparency, when you approached me, you gave me a choice of a number of topics. And then we went for my career in the newsroom and business and how those skills might help in the world of business, which is exactly what we're doing now. Yeah. So, but we could have gone off on all sorts of tangents if we hadn't have had that conversation, or we hadn't have narrowed it down to just the 2 things which we felt were the right things for the audience, the subject. So that's the first thing. I think, don't be afraid to ask those questions. And then I think be really mindful about what you want to say. And that comes in your preparation. Like there are some clear areas that I feel like, I can talk about comfortably. Then I always say, your vocals is a really interesting one. I think, this point you make about monotone delivery, it's because we do not read out aloud often enough.
Okay.
We speak all the time. And we think that's reading out loud and that's, helping our vocal get range. There are 88 keys on a piano. I don't play the keyboard. But, if you think about the 88 keys, that's your vocal range. You can you can do so much with your voice. So I call it the artist's palette of colours.
Okay.
Right? But people aren't taught. People don't know. So, we by default, we have these conversations and we think we're communicating, and then we have to deliver a speech or we have to do a podcast, and we just talk in that same way. But what you've got to do is really dig in, and you've got to start thinking, okay, you know what? I want to use my range. I want to speak fast sometimes if I'm excited about something, or just really slow it down if there's a strong point I want to make. So, but the number one thing I'd say, if I was going to leave your listeners with something or your viewers with something, is just take a children's storybook. To this day, when I work with whoever it is, children's storybook, and read that storybook out. Read that story out loud and bring those characters to life. And record yourself, because we've all got the phone. So you know what? Record yourself doing it. And, I want you to repeat that exercise at least 3 times. And every single time, I want you to put more emphasis on certain words. You can underline them. I want you to put maybe forward slashes where you force yourself to stop and pause. If it's an enormous giant, then let's make him enormous, as opposed to a tiny, weeny mouse. Because you have to start learning to play with your vocals in order to see what they can do and start to feel comfortable with that.
Love that.
I love it as well. Are you making notes?
Absolutely love it. Well, luckily I'm recording.
We're recording. That's okay.
I'm going to go home tonight. Parking your book set. Let's get the Gruffalo's Child.
Perfect, right? And they're fun, children.
Yeah.
I mean, you try reading a story to a child. They are not going to be happy if you read it in a monotone voice. They're going to pull you up on it big time.
Aren't they just?
I love that.
Anybody can do it, right?
Yeah.
And it's not a long exercise. And I think, make the time to maybe listen to something on radio, a show or a play or something, and just think about, actually, you know what? Look at the different ways they use their voice.
Yeah.
Wow.
Perfect.
I have so many. Me and Helen tonight, I know what we're going to be talking about. All these different tips.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's been absolutely incredible. I have learned so much in just this short space of time with you. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, Arti. You are such a wonderful person. You have so much knowledge and experience, honestly. So if people want to learn more about you, how can they find you?
Can I just say thank you so much for the accolades and the compliments, and it's
You're
been
amazing.
a joy. It really has. It's been such a great conversation, and I've learnt from you too.
Oh, well, there we go then.
So,
I'll take that £10 back now then.
This is the sign of a great conversation,
Yeah.
right? When we're all learning and sharing.
Absolutely.
So people can get in touch with me. It's really easy from LinkedIn, Arti Halai. Couldn't be any easier. My email, arti@ahaction.com.
Amazing.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you ever so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And we will have to book in part 2 and 3.
We've loved it.
Can't wait.
Thank you.
Thank you.